Hey, what's going on? JD here. Again, thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in, I realize this is like 11:30 at night and there's probably not going to be a lot of people in this stream, but like I said, I have deadlines. I have things that I have to do. I have to get these out right away. Normally I would maybe do them in the morning or something along those lines, but obviously tonight I have a tighter deadline. I have to get them out tonight, so I am going to do the photo edits live. If you happen to watch the replay, let me know that you watched the replay in the comments. But essentially, tonight, the Static Shift and Collective Soul. The Static Shift, a lot of people, if you are from Calgary, may have heard of them, or if you're in Canada, you may have heard of them. They were a part of the CTV launch television program where they launched several artists. They were the winner in their particular show. They are local Calgary guys. I have photographed them before. I know them through the YYC Music Awards. Basically, I photographed them there. Last year, they had a live performance at the Palace. So it was nice to see these guys essentially, on the big stage at the Jubilee Auditorium with Collective Soul opening from them. They did a fantastic job. It was a great performance. If you've ever been to the Jubilee, it's all seated. It is a big theater, so I was restricted where I could shoot. I was shooting with a 70 to 200 strictly because I was far off to the left-hand side, so there wasn't a lot of mobility. Anybody playing on the right-hand side of the stage, very difficult to shoot as well, being that it's a concert, low light, all that kind of stuff. Shooting a long lens in low light, not typically great for images. We're going to have to crop some of these, not my favorite thing to do, and some of them will probably have a little bit of blur in it because even, at 200 you had to be shooting over, basically 1/200th of a second to avoid shake. Being low light, it kind of amplifies that a little bit. So anyways, we're going to jump right into it. So this is obviously the Static Shift. And I'm just going to zoom in. You can see it's not perfectly sharp. It is grainy, but it's not too bad. So we're just going to straight into develop, and I'm just going to do my things. Like I said, generally I'm just like medium punch. There we go. Adjust, get the blacks up, drop the highlights just a touch, maybe a little bit of color correction. Although I don't think in this case, I think it's pretty accurate where we are. That's the thing with concerts. I just kind of shoot manual and take it from there and sort of eyeball it. So. Not a bad shot. We're going to crop it just a bit because I know, and this is going to be the issue with this shoot, is essentially that a lot of the images are going to look very similar because you're shooting from a side. It's unfortunate you don't have that mobility back and forth to get better stuff, but we'll do the best with what we have. And of course the noise, you can see there is a bit of noise, but again, there's little we can do. We're going to do some noise reduction, all that kind of stuff. All good. On to the next one. Bassist is on the other side of the stage playing the harmonica. Again, this is where I would probably frame it normally. Again, I'm just going to kind of punch that up. And again, the color temperature is actually not that bad. That's way too blue for my liking. Can lighten it up a bit, probably there, and that's good. And I mean, I always feel kind of silly with these things, and it's interesting because when people see the process, it is kind of the process. And this is what I mean. This would have been a cool shot if I had been more centered, but I've got to deal with what I have. Everybody else was shooting from the same side, so. Still kind of a cool shot. Obviously some motion blur. I kind of like that one a bit better. We're just going to kind of move it there. Now, the reason I'm cropping sort of for there is I want that the static shift in there. I kind of want, all that kind of stuff. Again, I like to punch up the blacks mostly. And this is a bit yellow. Um, I'll punch it that way a bit and cool it off a bit. And there you go. I don't like that one as much because you can't see his face. So essentially I'm going to ditch this one. It's just one of the few shots of the drummer. Also very hard to shoot given the circumstances. And again, I'm kind of restricted. I had a few other shots that I basically took out because he's in a bad spot, and the cymbal started getting in the way and all that kind of stuff. This was probably the best shot I was going to get of him, and it was one of the very few clean shots that I got of him. So, again, you know, I just kind of take a look at the color. I'm going to definitely put some blue in there. Pump up the black a bit. Knock that just back just a fraction. And of course, we're going to reduce the noise. And we're good and done. Good and done. Moving forward, bassist up. Again, a little bit of motion blur. You know, I wish they made a longer lens that was a 2.8, maybe something along the lines of, I would love like a, I would say something, because I've got 70 to 200. I would probably love something in the 150 to 600 2.8 variable zoom, like all the way through. It's kind of cool. Just gonna crop just a fraction. I like how it's got all this wood here, and I like how it kind of reflects. You can see him in the reflection. Pump up the blacks. You know, and that's what I do. A lot of times I will pump up the blacks to sort of get the... it definitely, if you're auto manually, I'm going to do custom white balancing. It just kind of a little too aggressive. Again, decent. I'm going to crop this a little bit, but I want to keep the drummer in the background. Which is sad because it kind of changes where it is. Like, I like how it's framed in full frame, but not so much when I crop it here. But there's just way too much kind of dead space up top. So that's what we're going to go for. And you can see it is quite noisy in there. You know, if we take the noise reduction out, you'll see a lot of grain. But that's fine. I'm fine with that. You know, you don't want to go too aggressive where it becomes like this weird. See how smooth this skin gets? Some people would be fine with that. And I mean, that is cranked up. I will typically not go beyond there. I am fine with a little bit of grain. That's what it is. You're shooting in a low light situation. It's not like, you know, it's going to be perfect. And I find it's a very, you know, a lot of people will like that kind of style. It's not my thing. I see a lot of people push it. They push up the clarity way too much, and then they do that with the noise reduction. And people that have wrinkles have no wrinkles, and it doesn't work for me. And this also, I'm going to crop a little bit. It's kind of cool. I'm going to crop out the mic side because I like all this stuff in the background. And I also like, you know, the kind of cool looking mats that they were playing on. You know, sort of, it's got a good vibe. If you haven't heard these guys play, it's most definitely, you know, an earlier rock kind of sound. It's really cool because they are super young guys. The fact that they love, you know, sort of rock and roll and a lot of old bands. It's, you know, it's cool to see. I mean, rock and roll is, you know, still good and alive. It will hopefully, because they are young, will hopefully inspire a lot of, you know, younger musicians and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, again, it's, you know, one of those situations where it's, you know, it's nice to see hometown guys do good. They're young. They've got, you know, probably a lot of, you know, time ahead of them. I like that kind of, but not really. So that's going to get ditched. That's very similar to the first shot, but oh, it's got kind of a weird hue from the lights. We'll go there. And if you do have any questions while we're kind of, you know, going along, by all means, shoot them at me. I like this shot, you know, sort of looking back across the way. And again, not my favorite thing to do with crop images, but, you know, not a ton of choice here for that. If you happen to be watching when I edited the Joe Satriani photographs, I mean, very similar situation, you know, shooting there. And you can see the grain. Again, you know, it's one of those things. I'm not even worried about it. You know, a lot of people that look at that, they're like, oh, there's way too much noise in the photograph and all that kind of stuff. The vast majority of these are going to be looked on the phone on the web. It's not like I'm blowing them up, all that kind of stuff. Again, you know, you got all the details, you got the set list, all that kind of stuff. You know, I like that image. It's a good image. These are very similar. Now this is what's going to make the difference, is whether he is and that, you know, just gone because it's a duplicated image. Kind of a wide shot there. I just want to mess with the horizon just a little bit. And maybe reduce that just a little bit. Kind of want to keep that back speaker, keep him in the thirds mark. And I like this. Like I said, you know, when you push those blacks and you get that nice smoke in the background, even though it's like a bit noisy at this moment, we haven't done any noise reduction. We've got some action in here in the hair. We've got them leaning back. We've got everybody's face. And that's the big thing, is getting everybody's kind of face in a decent thing, or frames good or well. This is a great kind of shot. You've got some audience members here, all that kind of stuff. I like this shot. I like it a lot. Again, two very similar images. I like this one better. And I'm just going to kind of leave it as is. I'm going to do the noise reduction here. Get the highlights off. Then we're going to bump up those blacks. Like I said, there's kind of some weird, that's way too aggressive color change. It's kind of where I think I want to be. Now I can maybe crop this tiny, tiny little bit, but I want to keep that drummer in there. And there you go. We'll go with that. So that's pretty much got the one last shot here of the static shift. And that is ultimately, at the end of the day, that is those guys. So again, congratulations, guys. You know, it's phenomenal that you guys are doing that kind of stuff. I could just tell they were having a blast. They were having a great time. It was a good set, you know, good music, good old, you know, kind of rock and roll. And now we're on to the Collective Soul stuff. Again, you know, these colors, super aggressive. We're going to go black and white with this one just because. And as I've mentioned before, I do like to shoot a bit on the bright side sometimes because I find it easier to kind of scale things back. As long as you don't blow out the highlights, you're generally pretty good. Again, we're just kind of getting the levels down. And again, you know, this is just kind of me messing with stuff. You notice I'm not changing the exposure typically a lot, all that kind of stuff. The whole key is kind of, I like this shot. This was really good because he kind of spun around the microphone and caught him, you know, sort of the peace sign out there. Again, you know, it's just kind of a cool shot. Drop the exposure just a tad. In focus, so that's good. Bump up the saturation a bit, and that's a great shot. I love that shot. Super cool. Because we have, I'm gonna get rid of that just because that was, the color was shit. That's cool. And again, hey, so here, let's see where, so you can see this one here, it didn't quite catch focus, whereas this one it did completely. So you go, you stay. Here's virtually at the other side of the stage there. And as you can see, I'm definitely shooting behind the crowd. There is no photo pit here, so. There you go. So I'm just kind of reducing some photos here because essentially I'm not going to release all of these. Again, I wish it just had just a tiny little bit. I also kind of wish that I was a little bit ahead of the crowd. Like, I mean, this is cool, this guy's up on the rail and stuff like that, but I think Unfortunately, it kind of takes away a little bit from the shot, but that's just kind of it. Although he is kind of serenading him there, so I mean, cool. And we're definitely going to zoom in for this one. Just leave this guy just a fraction in frame. Maybe a little bit less. I'm not sure which one I like here. I like that one. So that one can go. See, the thing is, these are good and clear. They had really good light for Collective Soul, so super cool. Just gonna leave those. That can go. And there we go. Done, done. No. So I got 48 photos. Like, I've got to ditch some of these. So, I mean, if they're just not quite there. Yeah, that's good. And it would have been nice if it caught focus on that one. I think I like that whole thing a little better, but that one is definitely the there you go. Guy's playing. Have another wide shot. I think I've got another wide. I've got another couple wide shots. I'm gonna just check those out quickly. That is the one I think I want to use, or that one. So let's go back. Well, there's nothing wrong with those. They're just not spectacular. I like that. Okay, I like this. This is kind of cool. And we're good in that department. You know, the mic stand here, he's just letting it go. Super, super cool. I'm going to crop that just a fraction. Frame it a little better-ish. Back here, and like I said, this is totally on the other side of the stage, so I don't even know how this is gonna. I mean, that is a ridiculous crop. Again, these are destined for the web, so I'm not terribly worried about it. As you can see now, my zoom is hardly at all. Reduce the noise, good enough. So I'm running across the stage. I'm going to go with this one. And that is good. And there's no giant secret to kind of doing these things. I mean, it's interesting in the sense that I think a lot of people expect a little more trickery and magic and all that kind of stuff, and that's most definitely not the case in these things. Whoops. Don't need to go across the other screen. We're going to drop down the highlights here, punch up the blacks. It's funny that the audience is almost more well lit than the stage itself. Just going to crop a fraction just because I don't want as much crowd in there as I have. What are we at? 40 photos. Oh my God, we got to reduce this. So that can go. Not that these are bad shots or not usable, it's just got to drop things down. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh wow, I have more. We're just making our choices here. That's kind of it. That is essentially it, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. That's kind of the process in itself. Again, you know, it's if you watch some of the other videos, I talk about shooting and all that kind of stuff. Again, when I get to this point, I really don't want to do a lot with the images because I should have it fairly right in camera to begin with, which is a big part of it. So thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to hit the like button if you found this helpful. Leave the comments below if you happen to be at the show, if you love the Static Shift, if you love Collective Soul, all that kind of stuff. You know, just leave your comments down below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. Thanks again for those couple of you that tuned in live late at night, because it is, you know, it's already the next day. It's 12:05 here, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you watch it in replay again, leave a comment that you watched the replay. Thanks again, guys. See ya.